Hey guys, how's it going? Danconia and welcome back to the Overwatch Transfer Roundup. So again, today it's going to be a pretty short one for the Transfer Roundup as we don't see too much going on as we're, in full swing of contenders. We're on the break until we run up to the grand finals of the Overwatch League, so no one can do any moves in the Overwatch League right now until that is over, unless they are letting people go, obviously. And then obviously, after the grand finals of the Overwatch League, things will start to hot up, as I said last week, because we will get a ton of transfers as league teams start to change up, and the contender season comes to an end, and they'll start to change up as well. But let's start off from the beginning here. Last week, we finished off with Sophie Johnson at Astra, so let's keep moving on here. And first of all, we have the South Korean support player Aztak. He is going to be becoming inactive at the Uprising Academy in North America. He will be going on loan to WGS Phoenix, World Game Star Phoenix, in Korea. Now this is rather interesting because World Game Star Phoenix actually have another player on loan for Uprising Academy. This is I'm37, who you'll actually know from the Overwatch League previously with Toronto Defiant, I believe. And this is an interesting move. World Game Star Phoenix, they came third in the Season 1 of Contenders Korea of this year. And in Season 2, they're doing pretty well as well. Contenders in Korea is a little bit shaken up at the moment because World Game Star Phoenix and Talon Esports are actually doing better than O2 Blast and Gen.G, which we wouldn't have expected. But the other groups are going fairly to plan, with Element Mystic and Runaway doing fairly well. But World Game Star Phoenix are doing well right now. They've qualified out of their group stage for this little bit of Contenders Korea alongside Talon. Talon are doing better than expected, actually. And it'll be interesting to see how this impacts them. I think it's a decent signing, and I think they should be able to push on from here. But when I said there were no Overwatch League moves, I mean, there are Overwatch League moves, but they're not player moves, they're coaching moves. So this is the San Francisco Shock. They are picking up the Dutch, well, he was head coach of Young and Beautiful, but he's moving to be an analyst at the San Francisco Shock. So this is interesting, I think, because Caceres was the guy who kind of was at the helm, or part of the coaching team, that ran the Atlanta Reigns' real good run at the end of 2019, where they did so well, and they were the only team to beat the actual San Francisco Shock, the champions of 2019, during the playoffs. And he did really well with the Dutch team in 2019 World Cup as well. So I think this is a pretty good pickup for the San Francisco Shock. He is only an analyst, though, and not a coach. So it's not, obviously, he's not going to be working, not on par with Krusty. That's not the right word, but he won't be working in a similar role to Krusty. He'll just be an analyst, but it's still a significant pickup for the San Francisco Shock, and something someone they clearly wanted on board for this Final Four, because obviously the Shock are in the Final Four. And it'll be interesting to see how they do with him on board and see if he can get a little bit more out of that team than Krusty's already getting. So, moving over to North America, two people coming into Karasuno. So, this is the two DPS players, actually. This is the American DPS N2S and the Argentinian DPS Valon. They will both be coming into Karasuno. A lot of moves at Karasuno. A lot of moves. It's really disrupting, if you see what I mean. Especially in North America, there's a lot of inconsistency in team rosters in North America, and it's kind of off-putting for a lot of people. So we'll see if Karasuno can settle down with this roster, but it's not the greatest of things to be continuously changing up like it has been in that region. Then we have someone leaving Infamous. This is the German tank player Moose. He will no longer be assigned and will be looking for a team. So now we get on to a new team being born, and this is possibly one of the most interesting teams I have seen being formed in Contenders for a very long time. So, this is the team that's called 200MS. Why are they called 200MS? Well, I think it's pretty obvious. They are pretty much all working on 200 ping, 200 millisecond ping. And why is that, you might ask? Well, this is actually a North American team, or competing in North America, but their actual location is Korea. So, this is a Korean team competing in North American Contenders. It's a very interesting concept. I don't think it's ever been done before. We've seen individual players working on that sort of ping. We've seen individual players working on that sort of ping in the Overwatch League. Yes, Mr. Fielder, amongst others. But this is an interesting concept, and it'll be really interesting to see how these guys do. So, they have brought in an assistant coach. He is going to play a dual role with assistant coach at 200 milliseconds and a micro coach at Far East Society, who are currently in that Pacific tournament. Obviously, there's no Pacific region contenders these days. This is Kanaki, the French coach. He will be helping out with that 200 MS team. It'll be really interesting to see how they do. Then they're also bringing in the Korean manager Cuddlemaster and the Korean coach Krepe. They were no longer assigned before this. Then they make a significant signing. This is the Korean coach Mobugi, who actually was with Chengdu and has transferred across from them. So that's actually a pretty big pickup considering Chengdu's prowess in the Korean region. So that's a really nice name to add to your coaching staff. But now we get to some player pickups. So this is 4 players that were previously unassigned. So they're all Korean, by the way, no surprises here because they are actually in the Korean region. This is the support player Vigilante, the tank player Violetta, and the 2 DPS players Finale and Felins. So nice pickups, really, really nice pickups, and they will all be coming in for 200 MS as they start to compete in North America. Then we have a very interesting pickup. This is the assistant coach at WGS Phoenix. He is a support player. This is Doby, and he is going to be inactive at WGS on his assistant coach role, and he's going to be loaned to 200 MS as a player. This is really weird and really, really interesting. I think a lot of these are just like, this is a really interesting concept. Let's give it a try because it's something different, and I reckon that's what's got people interested. Also, this is a name we've been talking about in recent times. It's Muse, the Korean tank player. He was inactive at Paris Eternal, or Paris Eternal's Academy, I should say, because that doesn't exist anymore. He's going to be moved on loan to 200 MS. Now, I believe Muse is in North America, so that's rather interesting. He probably won't be on the high ping, but it is significant in the fact that it's always on loan for Muse. It's never actually moving, so I don't know whether the Paris Eternal may have a plan for Muse coming up in the near future, and that's why they're not quite letting him go from the organisation yet. It's something to keep an eye on as we move into the off-season for the Overwatch League. It's very, very interesting. We are sticking with the North American Contenders region now, though, as we have a movement at Kratos. So this is them signing up a head coach. This is the Norwegian coach Solheim, who was unassigned before this. He's coming into Kratos to be a head coach. I wish him all the best at that team again. Middling in Contenders. It's going to be super interesting to see if they can improve with new coaching staff coming in. Also, we have a movement in Europe. This is the head coach of Sheer Cold leaving. This is the Swedish coach David. He'll be leaving Sheer Cold and will no longer be assigned. Again, movements at Sheer Cold have been quite plentiful recently. They haven't reached the heights that they've wanted to reach, but we will see if this can make a difference for them. Also, we have a movement at O2 Blast. This is the Chinese support Myung Jin, who was manager of O2 Blast and a player at LV Jing EP, who were competing in the Pacific. He's now going to leave his role at LV Jing EP and will just be the manager of O2 Blast. This is no surprise, it was a temporary role at LV Jing, and I wish him all the best, continuing with O2 Blast. Then we have another movement at Karasuno. This is them losing a coach, so this is the Pakistani coach IQB. He will be moving from Karasuno and joining up with Odyssey, so this is a movement within North American Contenders. I wish IQB all the best at Odyssey as he moves on from Karasuno, and you will see how well he can do. Odyssey are doing pretty well at the early part of this season, I think. Also, we have a movement in Europe. This is the British coach Rennie. He was a player at Ex Oblivione. He is now moving to the coaching role at Ex Oblivione. So again, Ex Oblivione kind of doing okay in Contenders. It's not been massive, but yeah, this is going to be an interesting move for Ex Oblivione, and we'll see how they do with that. Then we have the rest of the moves, and these are all actually in the Overwatch League. This is across 2 teams that have basically finished their seasons. I say basically, they have finished their season, they're out of the playoffs. So this is majorly at the Chengdu Hunters, and this is a complete overhaul of the coaching staff at Chengdu Hunters. So this is them letting go of co-head coaches Chen and Ray. They will no longer be assigned and will be looking for a team to take over after their time at Chengdu Hunters. Chen had been there for a little while since they lost their previous head coach, but Ray and Gary had actually been there since the creation of the Hunters. So this is again some very interesting moves coming in for Chengdu, and it's clear that they want to shake things up in the off-season, considering that they haven't had the best of times in the Overwatch League, and they did end up finishing, I believe, second bottom in the APAC region this year, ahead of the London Spitfire. They had a nice run towards the end of the season, but it hasn't been what they've been looking for. So yeah, they've let go of Ray and Chen, they've let go of Gary as assistant coach as well. They'll all be leaving, but coming into Chengdu Hunters is a new head coach, or I should say an old head coach. This is Rui. So Rui was the original head coach of the Chengdu Hunters. He then had to leave at the end of last season because he was suffering from a chronic medical condition. It is clear now, though, that this has improved, and he is now coming back to head coach the Chengdu Hunters once more. Now, I think he was a pretty consistent head coach of the Chengdu Hunters, even though the Chengdu Hunters didn't do fantastically during his period. But I think this is something that could stabilize the Hunters and stop them being so up and down. They do need other changes, I believe, the Hunters, to make them a good team, but I think this is some very, very good first steps for them. So, the last transfer we're going to be looking at is actually at the NYXL. This is them letting go of their strategic coach, Garincha. This is an interesting move, and it's maybe just the one move that we'll be having at the coaching staff with the NYXL during this off-season. Maybe they bring in more. But I don't see too much happening for the coaching of NYXL. The team, however, there may be a few things. I'm not sure where New York will go with their off-season. It should be fairly interesting, but this is the first move for them in their downtime between seasons. But the most interesting thing during this video is the moves at the Chengdu Hunters. I think that's without a doubt. It's going to be interesting to see where that team goes and what route it goes down, because with Rui coming back in and his experience at Miraculous Youngster, that opens the door for perhaps Yang Xiaolong and Jiquirin, or someone coming back who left when he left. So there's options for the Chengdu Hunters going into 2021. But that's going to round it out for this one. I have got an interesting video coming out probably tomorrow, which I would like a lot of people to tune in for if possible. But I'm going to leave it here for this one. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you'd like to give a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.